Valentina García is not a criminal by nature, but a hostage of fate, a young woman whose life has been consumed by her family's blood debt to the largest faction in Mexico. Since her teens, she has been a pawn on the chessboard of organized crime, acting as an informant, messenger, and intermediary, her apparent innocence the only protection in a world that knows no mercy. Her days are a monotonous and oppressive routine, where every step is calculated and every glance is a risk. She lives in the shadow of a burden that, in her early 20s, already weighed more than her fragile body. I share stories like Valentina's because I believe in their ability to make us reflect. If this narrative moves you, please consider subscribing to the channel. My goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers, a milestone that will allow me to continue bringing impactful stories like this one. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Valentina's life unfolds in a brutal setting of contrasts. She moves between the chaotic and colorful markets of a Mexican metropolis and the lifeless streets of her poor neighborhood, a melancholic silhouette against the vibrant backdrop of a country in constant upheaval. The city is a labyrinth, and she knows it intimately, not as a tourist, but as a prey that knows every escape route and every hiding place. Tension is her constant companion, a persistent knot in her stomach. She has no friends, no social life, no future, only the hope that one day the debt will be paid and she can finally breathe without fear. This is a fragile hope, a wavering flame that threatens to go out with every new order received. In her home, her only refuge, Valentina allows herself to be only a daughter and a sister. The walls of the small apartment are filled with photographs of her younger brother, Mateo, and her mother, whose fragile health keeps her oblivious to her daughter's grim reality. Mateo sees her as a heroine, the protector, who works tirelessly to support the family, and his pure smile is the only thing that keeps Valentina whole. The love for them is her motivation and her greatest weakness. She lives for them, endures the unbearable for them, and the idea of losing them is a terror that consumes her more than any external threat. Her family's vulnerability is the rope that the faction uses to manipulate her. Recently, a different chill runs down Valentina's spine. A new leader, known only as El Halcón, has taken control of the faction. He is an urban legend, a shadow, a man of methodical methods and icy cruelty. Rumors of his arrival brought with them an unprecedented wave of violence, and the faction, once a relentless predator, now looks like an irrational monster. Valentina feels the knot in her throat tighten. The game has changed. The rules have become more brutal. She is no longer just an informant. She is a link in a chain that has shortened, and she fears that at any moment the weight of the chain will crush her. One night, hiding behind a wall of boxes in an abandoned warehouse, she overhears the conversation that changes her destiny forever. Two low-level henchmen, speaking in low voices, mention her family's name. They talk about the debt being almost paid, but not in a way that suggests freedom. The words "loose ends" and "clean up" are whispered, followed by a cold, humorless laugh. Valentina's heart pounds in her chest, a frantic drumbeat of dread. The air becomes thick. She realizes that their debt would never be paid in full. It was a leash, and the moment they were no longer useful, they would be discarded, brutally and without hesitation. The illusion that her servitude would have an end, that her family would be spared, shatters into 1,000 pieces. Valentina understands, with an icy clarity, that they are not prisoners. They are cattle taken to the slaughterhouse. The debt was a lie, an excuse to keep them under control until the moment they were no longer useful. The resignation that sustained her for so long dissolves, replaced by an overwhelming despair. She is no longer fighting for a promise of freedom. She is fighting for her life and for the life of her brother and her mother. The fear transforms into an urgent need to act, to fight, to no longer be the pawn but the player. The sound of the conversation continues, but she no longer hears the words, only the essence of her condemnation. The men's laughter, the creaking of rusty metal, the smell of mold and rot in the air, everything mixes into a symphony of terror. Her mind, once paralyzed by fear, begins to work at a dizzying speed. She knows she has little time left, that the end is near. The extermination plan is already in motion. She needs to intercept it. She needs to find a way to reverse the situation, to transform the announced death into an opportunity for survival. Leaving the warehouse, the darkness of the night seems to embrace her, but the feeling is not of comfort, but of an imminent tomb. She moves like a shadow, her heart beating uncontrollably in her chest, a mixture of fear and a newly discovered fury. Her gaze, once that of a frightened victim, now carries a somber and determined fire. Her family's life is in her hands. This is the moment when the old Valentina dies, and a new, darker and more dangerous one begins to take shape. Vengeance is not yet a thought, but survival, at all costs, becomes her only and primordial goal. Valentina, with her heart beating like a war drum and her mind in a spiral of panic, clings to the only opportunity she sees. The anger she feels for the faction's conspiracy to eliminate her and her family drives her to an act of total madness. She remembers a ledger, a mythical artifact within the underworld that the faction leader kept in an impregnable safe. That book was not just a financial record, but the complete map of the organization, containing names, smuggling routes, and most importantly, secrets that could destroy the faction from within. The idea of stealing something so valuable is terrifying, but the terror of seeing her family dead is infinitely greater. She decides that the book will be her ace up her sleeve, the bargaining chip for freedom. The plan, although suicidal, is executed with a precision driven by desperation. Valentina, disguised and using her knowledge of the faction's security routines, breaks into the office at night. Darkness is her ally, and the sound of her own heart is the only noise besides her own. Every step, every movement is an echo of her decision. She manages to open the safe, her fingers trembling as she touches the worn leather of the book. There it is, the record of evil, the price of her freedom. Her intention is not to hurt anyone, just to save herself. She believes, naively, that by handing this book over to a rival faction, she will make a deal, a blood pact that will guarantee her family's safety in exchange for the information. But the criminal underworld has eyes everywhere, and the faction, driven by paranoia, has informants even in the most remote corners. Valentina's betrayal is discovered in a matter of hours. The exchange she tries to make on a dark, deserted street is a trap, and she falls into it painfully. Surrounded by armed men, her eyes search for a familiar face, but only find the cold, calculating gaze of El Halcon, the boss's right-hand man, the man she feared more than death. He does not see her as a frightened girl, but as a failure in the system, a stain that must be erased in an exemplary manner so that no other pawn dares to cross the line. The punishment that awaits her is not a quick bullet, but something much more cruel. She is dragged to a dense, isolated forest, a nightmare place where the sun barely reaches the ground. The darkness and silence of the forest are interrupted only by the sound of her gasping breath and the rustle of leaves. El Halcon, with a terrifying coldness, throws her into a pit already dug, and her hands and feet are tied. He does not speak, does not insult her. He simply watches her with empty eyes, as if he were preparing a scientific experiment instead of a burial. Valentina looks at the sky, and the last thing she sees are the grey clouds and the impassive face of her executioner. The earth begins to fall on her, and claustrophobia hits her like a concrete tide. The darkness swallows her, and the muffled sound of the earth falling is the only thing she can hear. The air in her lungs becomes a precious treasure. In this instant of absolute terror, the plea for her life transforms into a promise of revenge. She cannot die here, She will not. Her family still needs her. The last drop of air is her last chance. A primordial force ignites in her chest. You know, in moments like this, you don't think about anything else, just not being defeated. I knew I needed to find a way to fight, to get up, and I realized that was my only option if I wanted to stay alive. The choice was simple: accept death or decide that I would do anything to save myself, and fate led me to seek that strength. The darkness was total, the smell of damp earth and rot suffocating. Valentina, buried alive, screams, but the sound is muffled, crushed by the weight of the earth. Each beat of her heart is an echo in the earthy prison that consumes her. Panic chokes her, but it is hatred that keeps her conscious, the silent promise that she would not die. There is the only thing that prevents her from giving in. She fights, not with strength, but with the pure instinct of a trapped creature. She feels something hard under her arm, a twisted root, and with her hands tied, she begins to struggle, to tear the earth around her. The struggle is desperate, a dance of death against time and the air that is running out. The terror is a high tide, but she clings to a rock of hope. The fight for every inch of air and space becomes the only reality. She feels a twisted root under her arm and uses it as a lever. The leather of the rope that ties her hands creaks, but does not give way. She uses her nails to tear at the earth, her hands to push it, and with each movement the earth covers her more, but she persists. The memory of El Halcon's cold face is the fuel. She cannot give him the satisfaction of her death. She will rise from the grave. Her skin is torn, the dirt in her eyes, but she continues. The world is a blur of pain and despair, but her mind is clear. She needs to live. Hours drag on in the claustrophobic darkness. The pain of the struggle is eclipsed by the need to breathe. The air in her lungs is a precious treasure. With a strength she didn't know she had, she manages to tear the leather of the restraints. Her hands are free. From there the fight changes. It is no longer a race against time, but a battle for every inch of space. She uses her nails to rip at the earth, her head to push it, and with a superhuman force, she breaks the surface. The moonlight hits her dirty face. She breathes a gasp of fresh air, and the sensation is that of being reborn. She crawls out of the earth, her clothes torn and her body covered in mud. She is a spectre, a ghost who has returned from hell. Stumbling through the dark forest, she moves by instinct, by a single thought: revenge. The idea of going back home to her family is too dangerous. The faction will look for her, and they know where to find her family. They used that weakness once, and she will not let it happen again. She needs to disappear, to become a legend, a ghost, and the hunt for El Halcon and his henchmen begins. Her body is weak, but her mind is a fortress of hatred and determination. The darkness of the forest is her new home, and the sounds of the night, her new soundtrack. She is the prey that has become the hunter. Exhaustion consumes her. She faints in a clearing. She wakes up hours later to the sound of branches breaking. In the center, a small camp. The bonfire casts dancing shadows, and she sees a man, an old hunter with a marked face and eyes that seem to have seen hell. He is the mentor of the premise. He watches her, not with fear, but with a cold curiosity. He doesn't ask questions. He simply offers a canteen with water and a piece of bread. His generosity is unexpected, and Valentina hesitates, but thirst and hunger overcome her. She drinks the water and eats the bread, and strength returns to her body. She doesn't trust him, but he seems to understand. The hunter, who introduces himself as El Lobo, is a former soldier, a man who has seen the brutality of the world and retreated to the forests. He watches her with a coldness reminiscent of El Halcon's, but his eyes, though tired, have a glimmer of humanity that the other lacks. He sees the pain and anger in her, but also the strength that pulled her from the grave. He understands what motivates her. He doesn't question her story. He simply accepts her and offers her a path, a way to channel the hatred into something useful. into a weapon. He trains her, and she becomes his most dedicated student. The training is brutal. Valentina learns to track, to move in silence, to use a knife, and most importantly, to control her anger. She learns that revenge is a fire that can either consume or illuminate. El Lobo teaches her not to be reckless, to be calculating, and to use her head instead of brute force. Every day, the old Valentina becomes a memory. She becomes stronger, faster, and more lethal. The pain of loss and the hatred she feels for the faction transform into an engine that drives her forward. El Lobo is her guide, her teacher, and the only one who understands her. He does not judge her for her desire for revenge. He molds her. Months turn into years. Valentina, now a woman of few words and empty eyes, transforms into a legend, the ghost of the forests, the woman who survived death and hunts the faction. She acts in the darkness, steals weapons, information, diverts shipments, destroys hideouts. She is a plague, a shadow that terrifies El Halcon's henchmen. She is his biggest headache, an invisible enemy. The faction does not understand who she is or where she came from. They call her La Sombra. Her war is a guerrilla war of quick and lethal attacks. She moves like a ghost, leaving only chaos and terror behind. Valentina's first great victory is the destruction of a valuable arms shipment. She doesn't steal it, she blows it up so no one can use it. The act is a declaration of war, a clear message to the faction. El Halcon's response is brutal. He kills 2 of his informants, a warning to all who dare to help her. The tension increases. In that moment, as I saw the news about the faction's response, a part of me felt the terror again, but it was different. It was a cold rage, a hatred that guided me. Fighting against the system was the only thing that kept me alive, and I knew that you, who accompany me, give me the strength to continue. Thank you for being here. El Lobo, perceiving the escalation of violence, advises her to be more careful. He reminds her that revenge will not bring her peace, and that she can get lost in the darkness she is pursuing. But Valentina doesn't listen to him. She is blinded by hatred. She wants El Halcon. She wants to make him pay for every inch of dirt he threw in her grave. Her thirst for revenge consumes her, and she begins to make mistakes. She becomes reckless, less cautious, and more focused on the target. The faction, on the other hand, becomes smarter, and traps begin to appear. The hunt becomes a dangerous dance between predator and prey, and the roles are constantly reversed. The confrontation with El Halcon approaches. Valentina manages to intercept one of his men and interrogates him. She discovers that El Halcon is in a remote hideout, preparing a large-scale operation. She knows it's her only chance. She needs to act now. El Lobo warns her about the recklessness, but she doesn't care. She is ready for battle. She prepares, sharpens her knife, and checks her weapons. She looks in the mirror and doesn't see the frightened young woman from before. She sees a warrior, a ghost, a shadow who has returned from hell to hunt her executioners. Fear has been replaced by determination. El Halcon's hideout is a fortress. Valentina moves through the night like a shadow, avoiding security cameras and guards. She uses the tactics. She learned from El Lobo, and every step is perfect. She infiltrates the complex and finds the map of the operation. She memorizes it. She has what she needs. But she doesn't leave. She doesn't just want to dismantle the operation. She wants El Halcon. She wants her revenge. The initial plan of just stealing information is lost. Hatred blinds her, and she advances towards El Halcon's office, where he awaits her. The fight is brutal. El Halcon is a formidable opponent, a trained, fast, strong, and ruthless warrior. He underestimates her, thinking she is just a woman moved by emotion. He is wrong. The fight is not just a battle of strength, but a battle of will. Valentina uses her agility and her fury against his brute force. She dodges, attacks, and the fight is a dance of blades and fists. El Halcon is surprised. He didn't expect the victim he buried to be the same one who is now facing him. The fury in his eyes is the fury of a ghost. The fight is prolonged. El Halcon manages to hit her, but she continues. The pain feeds her. The hatred for everything he and the faction did to her, her family, all the victims, is what keeps her standing. Revenge, once just an idea, is now the only thing that motivates her. El Lobo was right. She was getting lost in the darkness, but she doesn't care. She needs revenge. She needs to make evil pay. The confrontation becomes more personal, more visceral. Each blow is a scream. Each cut is the manifestation of the pain she carries. She doesn't just want to win. She wants to destroy him. The combat reaches its climax. El Halcon, tired, underestimates Valentina one more time, and she uses his weakness against him. She hits him with the knife, and the pain makes him fall. He looks at her, and for the first time, she sees fear in his eyes. He sees the girl he buried, but the girl is gone, and the shadow has replaced her. The tears that roll down her face are not of sadness, but of rage and of a deep pain that transcends physical pain. She is one step away from revenge. The moment of truth. She can kill him, she can have her revenge, but something stops her. She remembers her family, her brother. She remembers what El Lobo told her. Revenge will not bring her peace. Revenge will consume her. She needs to break the cycle of hatred. She cannot become a monster like him. The knife falls from her hands, and she walks away. She does not kill him. She spares him, but leaves him alive so he can remember the face of the woman. He tried to bury the woman who defeated him. The confrontation with El Halcon ends. El Lobo finds her, and her wound is deep. He takes her to a safe place. He doesn't judge her for having given up on revenge. He understands her. Her journey is not about revenge, but about redemption. She realized that the only way to free herself from her past is not to become like her tormentors. She spares El Halcon, but she destroys his operation. She steals all the documents and hands them over to the authorities. The faction falls apart in an internal power struggle. El Halcon's absence creates a power vacuum that others try to fill. The internal war destroys them, and the authorities, with the help of Valentina's documents, dismantle the organization from within. The faction, which seemed invincible, is destroyed, not by a bloody war, but by a shadow, a ghost they tried to bury. Valentina's mission is complete, and she can, finally, be free. But freedom is not easy. She is alone. Her family does not know about her journey, and she cannot return to them. The danger is too great. She cannot reveal herself. She cannot put their safety at risk. She is a ghost, and ghosts have no home. She says goodbye to El Lobo, who understands her. He says the door to his cabin is always open. Her journey is now a solitary one, but it is hers, and she can choose her destiny. The fear for her family is a heavy burden. She moves to a distant city and lives a discreet life. She is still a shadow, but a shadow that seeks peace. She uses the money she stole from the faction to help other families, other victims, so that no other child has to go through what she did. She is a vigilante, an angel who acts in the shadows to help the people who need it. Her story, her journey, has become a tale of hope and redemption. Valentina feels, for the first time in years, at peace. She no longer has the burden of debt or the fear of death. She can finally live her life. Her journey did not make her a cold and cruel woman. It made her a stronger, more determined, and more human woman. She remembers the face of her brother and her mother, and she knows she did the right thing. Her revenge was not the death of El Halcon, but her own redemption and the fall of the faction. Time passes. She becomes a legendary figure in the underworld, a legend that helps people. Those who were oppressed by the faction see her as a figure of hope. She does not seek glory or recognition. She just wants peace and the chance to live her life. El Lobo, her mentor, visits her from time to time, and they talk, not as a master and a student, but as two friends who share the same pain, the same loneliness, and the same hope. Valentina finds herself in a remote village, helping a family flee from a criminal group. She comes across a girl who looks at her with fear, and she remembers herself. She remembers her story, and she knows that she can no longer run. She needs to fight. She needs to be a voice for those who have no voice. She becomes the protector of that girl and helps her to be free. Danger pursues her, but she is no longer afraid. She knows she is not alone. She has El Lobo, and she has her legacy, the legacy of a ghost who became a legend. The end of her journey is not a death, but a new beginning. She is no longer the victim, but the heroine. Her story is not about what the faction did to her, but about what she became. She is Valentina García, the shadow, the ghost, the vigilante. Her journey is proof that hope can be born from desperation and that strength can be born from weakness. She is a beacon of hope in a dark world, and her story is an inspiration to all who suffer. She became the person she needed to be, and her journey is a journey of redemption. She forgives herself for her mistakes and allows herself to live. Valentina's future is uncertain. She is a hunter, a protector. Danger pursues her, but she is no longer afraid. She lives her life, one day at a time, and she knows that her story is not over yet. She became a legend, and the legend continues. She says goodbye to her past and embraces her future. She is free, finally. Valentina's victory over the faction was not a resounding event, but the silent result of her transformation. With the delivery of the documents stolen from El Halcón to the authorities, the network of crimes that seemed impregnable begins to disintegrate. The faction, once a unified and ruthless power, divides into smaller factions, destroying themselves in an internal war for power and influence. The chaos that the faction sowed for years now turns against them. Valentina, the shadow, the ghost, becomes the catalyst for their own downfall. Her revenge was not with a bullet, but with the truth, the only weapon the faction could not fight. Her journey from victim to vigilante finds its resolution. Freedom, however, comes at a price. Valentina cannot return to her family. The danger is too great, and the faction, although fragmented, has long memories. She becomes a ghost, an urban legend, a mythological figure that haunts the shadows. Her family, unaware of her sacrifice, considers her a missing person, a victim of the dark world. She watches them from a distance, in silence, knowing that their safety is her greatest reward. The love for her family, the initial motivation for her journey, is now manifested in a painful but necessary distance. It is a bittersweet ending, but a peaceful ending that honors her sacrifice and transforms her into a legendary figure. El Lobo finds her in a remote cabin months later. He watches her and perceives the change in her eyes. The coldness of revenge has been replaced by a resolute calm. The wound of betrayal has healed. She is no longer the victim, but the survivor, and her journey is a tale of overcoming. He praises her, not for her strength or cunning, but for her humanity. She thanks him, knowing that he saved her not only from death, but from the darkness that revenge would have led her to. Her journey, which began in the grave, ends in redemption, a cycle of pain and overcoming that transforms her into a legend. Valentina, now at peace, is grateful for having had the chance to live. Her life is no longer about what the faction did to her, but about what she became. She says goodbye to her past and embraces her future. She is free, finally. She no longer seeks revenge, but peace. She became the person she needed to be, and her journey is a journey of redemption. She forgives herself for her mistakes and allows herself to live in peace. She is a beacon of hope in a dark world. Her story has become a legend, an echo of hope for all who suffer. Valentina, the girl who was buried alive and became the shadow, is a symbol that strength can be born from weakness and that light can be born from darkness. Her journey is proof that humanity can prevail over cruelty. What saved me was not hatred, it was the strength to keep going, even when it seemed impossible. Your strength, your faith in me, is what allows me to keep fighting and sharing this story. Your subscription and your support mean everything to me, and it's what gives me the strength to continue.